Good evening. I am the committee chair, Kathy Kitchell, and on behalf of committee members and staff, I would like to welcome you to the March 29th, 2022 City of Roseville Local Sales Tax Citizens Oversight Committee meeting. This 5-member committee is charged with the annual review and report to the City Council on the revenue and expenditures of funds from the General Transactions and Use Tax, known as Measure B, that was passed by voters on November 6, 2018. I will now call the meeting to order. Terry, would you please call roll?
Chair Kitchell.
Present.
Vice Chair Krafka.
Present.
Committee Member Duffy is absent excused. Committee Member Hill is absent excused. Committee Member Spate.
Here.
All members are present with the exception of Duffy and Hill.
Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Fall over.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
To the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This part of the agenda, public comment, is for anyone who would like to address the committee on any item not listed on tonight's agenda. The Brown Act does not permit action on items discussed during public comment. When addressing the committee, please stand at the podium, state your name for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and move on to item 5, approval of minutes. Item 5.1. This item is approval of the minutes of the November 30th, 2021 and the February 8th, 2022 meetings of the Local Sales Tax Citizens Oversight Committee. And Joe, I understand you have an explanation of why we're approving two.
Yes. Before you are both the February 8th and the November 30th, 2021 minutes. And so we intended to approve the November 30th, 2021 minutes at our last meeting, but we didn't procedurally do that correctly. And so I just want to make sure that we capture that properly for the record. But what I also want to note for the record is that when we intended to approve the November 30th minutes, all of the committee members that were here approved the minutes as presented. And so even though some of them are not here tonight, I just wanted to make sure that was noted for the record.
Thank you. Are there any comments from the committee? Any public comments? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Motion by committee member Spate, seconded by committee member Krafka to approve the minutes of the November 30th, 2021 and the February 8th, 2022 meeting of our committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion passes.
Not enough of us to oppose it.
Item 6.1, report to council for approval. For this item, staff is recommending that the Local Sales Tax Citizens Oversight Committee adopt a motion to approve the committee's report that will be presented to the City Council. And I will ask Dennis to start the discussion on this.
Good evening, Chair Kitchell and committee members. I'm Dennis Kaufman, Assistant City Manager and Chief Financial Officer for the city. Included in your agenda packet tonight was the draft committee report that was drafted by 2 of your committee members. And this agenda item is to discuss that draft and to pass a motion to approve the report for presentation to the City Council on April 20th.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
So I believe the both of you drafted it.
Yes.
So no questions for yourselves. Just a couple of things on the first page, the longer paragraph. I think there's a repeat of the word programs. It has programs/services/programs, and so just a minor thing, but I assume.
I'm sorry, where is that? I see.
It just has programs twice, just a simple thing.
Okay, gotcha.
And then on page 3, the first bullet point there, the scorecard attached provided the committee with additional information, blah, blah, blah. It indicates that budgeted expenditures were comparable to those of the base year, which is perfectly valid, good statement. I didn't know if we wanted to add that this was an indication that services were maintained, because that's the whole point of that analysis, right, is to show that services were maintained, which is an objective of Measure B. So I might recommend just adding that commentary in, that this is an indication services were maintained.
Okay.
And then the only other thought I had is on the last bullet point. So I noticed the condition that's in there, and I understand why it's in there. And when does the council workshop occur?
It already took place.
Oh, it did take place, okay.
And the outcomes of that workshop will be coming forward as part of the budget process.
Okay, so we just don't.
Over the coming months.
The outcome isn't public yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Do we want to rephrase this then?
Well, I think your recommendation is just that when we bring forward the results for the current fiscal year next January, that our information will include how the city council allocated the rest of that surplus from last fiscal year. And I think that's a reasonable recommendation.
Yeah, the only thought I had is it leaves it really open, right? It leaves it open. You know, we conclude that they were used for their intended purposes except for this open item. So I didn't know if we wanted to state in there, you know, if the city council decides to take recommendations from staff, as, you know, noted above, the surplus funds, using it for the street resurfacing, for capital expenditures, or I didn't know if we wanted to say if city council decides to use it for these purposes, it would meet its intended purpose. So in other words, it gives it more closure than otherwise it almost seems like it's open-ended, like we haven't concluded yet, right?
I don't know that we can conclude. So what you're saying is expand a little bit on our caveat that as long as the council follows the guidelines.
As long as their workshop indicates funds will be spent in manners of X, Y, and Z, it would meet the intended's purpose. And then that way, if they do decide to use funds following X, Y, Z, then our job is done. There's no further explanation needed. We don't have to go back and reassess. This leaves it open, like almost like we have to go back and reassess. How did they use it, right?
I think the caveat that I would add is that remembering that Measure B is a general tax, and these were surplus general fund resources that resulted from surplus revenue as well as expenditure savings, and that the council theoretically could allocate them for any type of project that they would deem fit. And so I might suggest that maybe you put something in here that the council consider the Measure B priorities when making their allocation decisions. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
We can do that. I just was hoping to have the way it is now, it just leaves it open. It almost leaves it like we have to come back after they make a decision, right?
And that is pretty aligned with the role of this committee, that we would present to you next year how the city council made the budget decisions for
Okay, so it'd be
how
next
general
year?
fund revenues were
So that's the
spent.
intent then, for us to come back next year and make an opinion on this year?
I think in this particular case, because there was such a surplus, and the size of the surplus, we can't determine how much of that was Measure B and how much was not.
Right.
And so I think that the committee has a responsibility to revisit that and make sure that the general goals were met. And I don't know how we could do that without actually have staff include that as part of their report next year.
Yeah, and that's fine. So that just means essentially we're not concluding this year until next year then. Was that the intent?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, basically, everything is fine, but we still don't understand, we don't know at this point what's going to happen with this big pot of money that's sitting there.
Okay.
So I don't think we could actually sign off on everything right now because we don't know yet.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. Okay. I was just hoping for a little more closure.
And
I know.
to that point, until council makes the decisions on how they're going to spend all of that money, we won't have that closure. We don't know yet what they will finally approve either.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
And this way it makes it official and reminds next year's committee and staff that
Yep.
we had an open issue. I mean, overall, everything, and I think I wholeheartedly agree with adding the sentence regarding that services are being maintained, and I think that covers a large part of the purpose of Measure B.
Yeah,
But there is still this open issue.
yeah.
And what happens if the city council decides to spend the money and we don't like it?
Then you have an opportunity to address that in your report next year.
Yeah.
Well, why wait till next year? If the budget's coming out, when, in April?
The budget will be released in May and
Okay.
adopted in June.
Then we need to have a meeting after June
But
to make
remember,
sure that what's happened with the money is something that is in line with the Measure B.
but the role of this committee is not to weigh in on the budget, it's to weigh in on the actual revenues and expenditures after the end of the fiscal year. And so you'll be meeting again in January of 2023, looking back to what happened during this current fiscal year, which is July of
See,
20.
that would be a little bit late, though, to make any changes.
But that's,
I think our role is to issue an annual report to the city council too, right? I don't,
Well, you can do that too, but I mean, I guess my whole problem with this process is that we're not doing anything about the money that's coming in.
correct. The role of the committee is not to advise on how the money ought to be spent, it's to look back at how the money was actually spent. That's correct.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's an oversight. Yeah.
I mean, if we found that some of the funds were utilized in an erroneous fashion, the only thing we could do is indicate that in our report to inform city council, and then they take the action to correct it or whatever they
The
decide to do.
public hears the report.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we don't have any actual active role in how these monies are collected or spent. We just oversee what happens and report to council.
Correct.
I mean, it just boggles my mind that you set goals for things and nobody measures them.
Well, we
All right, I'll give you an example. Maintenance of citywide parks. There are 3 parks listed on there. How do we know anybody did anything at those 3 parks with the money that we gave them?
the public visits and uses those parks on a daily
I
basis.
mean, the public's not going to come up to the city council and say, gee, we allocated money for these 3 parks, where is it?
Well, I think that was the intent of showing that funds were spent on these services, so we can show that funds
Were they spent? That's my question.
Well, yeah, I mean, according to the scorecard, it shows that funds were spent on parks and
Okay,
recreation.
but were
And
they
then
spent on
second-
these 3 things that they list in here? I mean,
And then the
that's
second portion, why we included the community input, you know, are they happy with the services being provided? And so, no, you're not going to get down to, was this $100,000 spent sweeping this park? But you can see funds were spent on services. You can see that the community is happy with services.
Well, that begs a different question, but that's okay. It's all right. I mean, I just don't understand how you set goals for things without measuring them. And if they're not goals, then that doesn't make any difference.
I think the measurement point is maybe what's subjective and how you measure the goals.
Well, then they can't be goals.
Would it help next year, when we bring forward our information for the current fiscal year, if we invited a few of our department heads to be available so that you can ask
Good
questions
plan.
about that?
I think that's great.
Okay, we'll do that.
Good suggestion. Thank you, Dennis.
Moving right along.
Any more comments? Okay. Thank you for the suggestions. Are there any public comments on this item? Seeing none, I will close the public comment portion. But do I have a motion to approve the committee's report to the City Council?
I'll make a motion motion to approve the city's report.
And I'll
Can-
second it.
Can I ask if the motion includes that we also include the edits that were recommended by Commissioner Krafka regarding
Sorry, let
the
me
services that are
rephrase.
maintained?
I will make a motion to approve the report as issued with the 2 edits recommended to strike the duplicate word programs and add in the indication that services were maintained clause.
Perfect. Thank you.
And with the attachment, too.
Oh, yes, I assumed that was part of it, yes.
Correct. Yes.
I will second.
Second. You got, we're all set.
Terry, would you please take roll?
Committee Member Kitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Krafka,
Yes?
Committee Member Spate,
Yes.
motion passed.
Item 6.2 is report to council. This involves the presentation. For this item, staff is recommending that the Local Sales Tax Citizens Oversight Committee approve a motion to designate 1 or 2 committee members to present the committee's report to the city council. Dennis?
As I've indicated, we've scheduled this committee to present its report at our April 20th City Council meeting. And so our staff are looking for 1 or 2 committee members to volunteer to make that presentation.
Are there any comments or questions from the committee?
No. There's only 3 of us here, so 2 out of 3 of you folks have got to go.
I would recommend at least one who wrote the report attend in a minimum. Well, I guess that would have to be.
Are there any public comments? Seeing none. Do I have 1 or more volunteers that are interested in presenting the committee's report to the city council? I volunteer to do that. My only caveat is if I'm not in town. My schedule is not under my own decisions at this point, so that's the one caveat I have. So I think it's important that we do have a second in case I can't be there. John or Megan?
Attend, unless you want to, I did last year.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm happy to attend with you.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you. Do I have a motion to appoint Member Kitchell and Committee Member Krafka as the designees to present the committee's report to the City Council?
So moved.
And second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you. Terry, would you please take roll?
Do we need to elaborate on the motion?
No, that was a great motion.
Chair Kitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Krafka,
Yes.
Committee Member Spate,
Yes.
motion passed.
I guess that concludes our meeting.
Can we invite the other member, because typically what we've done is 2 can present, but others are welcome to attend, so hopefully we can extend the invitation to them if they wish to join.
You can do that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It would be like any other council meeting, you're free to come and go.
Yeah, well, it's still nice to,
We'll let them know.
thank you.
Personal invitation.
Yes.
I'd like one engraved, please.
Can I have a motion for adjournment then?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned at 7, looks like 7.
6:20.
Six.
6:20, 6:19. Okay.
Fastest
Thank you.
meeting ever.
Oh.